Now let's understand what is prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is as much an art as it is a science, a very creative line. We'll come back to this once we understand what is actually prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is made up of two words, prompt and engineering. Prompt is nothing but a detailed set of guidelines or instructions given to the LLM or generative model to do a task. Engineering is developing iteratively a task specific prompt to enable the generative models or LLMs to output a perfect or near perfect outcome that you have focused for. So, if you see, prompt engineering is an iterative process. How? First is the idea that comes to you that you want this. Then you have prompt, you design a prompt. Then there are results. You give that to your model, your ChatGPT, okay? And then you have to test, you have a feedback, right? So basically, it's a process, a iterative process. Now, once you have the prompt and you have the results, you might be not very much satisfied with the result. This is where you develop or you have a conversation with your ChatGPT, with your model, and enforce or reinforce the model to give you a good result, a good output, which is what you want. For example, if you have a task on code generation, now a specific problem statement can be solved through various methods. For example, you want to output palindrome. Palindrome can be done by brute force. Palindrome can also be done by a recursive method, recursion. For example, when you give ChatGPT a prompt, it will first give you a brute force method. You have to keep on instructing and providing an attempt or providing a prompt to ChatGPT so that it gives you an optimized version for your code. This is an example for code generation. Similarly, suppose you have content creation. You want to create a content, and your content that you want to create is directed towards a specific target audience. Now, when you give ChatGPT a prompt, the results it will show you that might not be satisfying enough. You have to tell your ChatGPT or your generative model iteratively what you want. Give them a feedback. For example, you have not received a good output. What you will tell your ChatGPT, for example, this is not I want. Please generate the output based on my target audience or based on my feedback provided, right? That's where your feedback or test comes into picture. You have to have a conversation with your generative model, or for in this case, if we say ChatGPT, give them a feedback, constant feedback. It is good, it is bad, it is what specific part you want it to be changed, right? All these things are an iterative process. That's why we say prompt engineering is an iterative process based on the guidelines or the detailed set of instructions that you provide for a specific task. Now let's go back a bit. We said when we started about prompt engineering that it is an art as it is a science. How it is an art? It is an art because when you conceive an idea and when you write a prompt, it is your creativity which comes into picture. However, the science part comes in when you provide your generative model or LLM, or in this case, ChatGPT, the prompt and it gives you the result. Because in the back end, there is something called generative models, there is something called different transformers or architectures that are going into picture where billions of parameters are playing a role to give you this result. That becomes your science part of it. That's why prompt engineering is combination of both an art and science. Now that you have understood what is prompt engineering, let's go and see the main element of prompt engineering, that is prompts, without which generative model ChatGPT will not work. Prompts are constituted, or it contains two parts majorly, that is parameters and structure. What will be the structure and what will be the parameters of your prompts there? When you design it, you have to think so that you have an optimized result. Now, structure is one thing that we'll talk more about, and parameters here, let me explain. I have only selected few parameters. You can search more. There are more parameters on which prompts work. Majorly, here we are highlighting only three parameters, that is temperature, top P, and max length. Temperature is the randomness that comes into picture when you provide that parameter to your prompt. It ranges from 0 to 1. And if you want your model to be creative and generate creative answers or generate creative outcomes, your range, or you set your temperature to 0.7 to 0.8. However, in tasks such as code generation, you don't need creativity. So you can set your temperature to 0 also, where you do not want creativity. Now, top P is actually kind of same as temperature. It also has creativity. Top P is top probability that it selects from. So you have a generative model. It generates results based on your prompt. Now, there can be n number of results. How does that model decide what to put as an output for you? Here, top P comes into picture. More the top P, more you have different creative answers, right? So, low for factual, high for diverse. Last is max length. Again, it is written, manage your response length. This parameter is to control the cost of your generative model as well. So, now you have understood what is prompt engineering, what is a prompt, and what are the two main components of your prompt, that is parameter and structure. Now let's see components of a good prompt. What we mean by good prompt is that your ChatGPT, your generative model, gives you a good output, your good outcome, and you have less feedbacks for your ChatGPT or generative model. Now let's see. The first, or I would say the first two, are context and instruction. These are interchangeable how you want to design your prompt. If you want to keep instruction first and then context in your prompt, you can do the same. If you want to keep the context first and then instruction, you can do the same. Context is an additional information that you want to provide to your model. Instruction is a specific task that you want your model to perform. For example, if you want to summarize some text, that is your instruction. Summarize your text. Summarize this text. Context is why you want to summarize. What is the outcome you want to achieve? For example, going back to Tesla, there you are providing an instruction to summarize, but the context is that you want a business report. From a business report, you want what is the profit from 2020 to 2023, right? So that is the context that you need to set. Why do you want this? Why it is needed? Next is the input data. Okay. What is your input data? For the example, Tesla example, the input data is your business report or business article that you will provide to ChatGPT. And output indicator is what and how you want as an output. For example, you want in a CSV format, your output. Suppose you want in a tabular format, or you want in a graphical format. So you have to tell what kind of output or what format of output you want. So these are the four components of a good prompt. If your prompt consists of these four things, you are enabling your generative model, your ChatGPT, to give you better and good results. Now, let's see an example. Here we will see sentiment analysis. We are setting up a context. It is written, act as an analyst. You are asking your ChatGPT to act like an analyst working for an OTT platform. You are saying your ChatGPT that you will have to perform sentiment analysis based on the feedback provided by the consumers. You are working for an OTT platform. Your consumers are the users that are seeing your movies, your web series. Now, the feedback that they provide, on that you have to do sentiment analysis.